Let's talk about the Uncanny X-Men issue 186, Lifedeath, a love story. Storm of the X-Men is one of the greatest superheroes, X-Men, and comic book characters of all time. I don't think that's a very controversial opinion. And Lifedeath is one of the definitive Storm stories. It's incredibly defining for the character, and in my opinion, it's a must-read for any Storm fan, or really any X-Men fan. The story hits Storm with a completely new, life-shattering low for the character, and depicts how even in this instance, she can eventually fight through the hardship and the suffering and come back stronger with an even higher high. Before we really dive in, let me preface by saying this issue includes some other stuff. It's a double-sized issue after all. It's got some Dire Wraith stuff, some Val Cooper stuff, some Rogue stuff, but I'm going to specifically focus on the through line of what's going on with Storm and Forge in this issue, which is what is interesting to me and I think is significantly more impactful in the grand scheme of things. Here's the gist of what you need to know. In the previous issue, 185, Storm saves Rogue from being hit by this gun that permanently neutralizes mutant powers. In doing so, she ends up getting shot with it herself, though. And while Forge didn't fire this weapon, he is the inventor of it, and it was created for government use. Because he is, he works for the government. He's a government employee. All of this happens, by the way, along the banks of the Mississippi River. So when Storm gets shot and goes down, she's also at risk of drowning. And, Forge ends up diving in and saving her. And so we begin the life-death story in the home/laboratory of Forge, which is located in Texas, by the way. And he has Storm here, resting or recovering or whatever. And we are immediately clued into the enormity of the loss and the devastation of Storm with the harrowing opening panels of Storm in this issue. These images that we're hit with, they are totally like the antithesis of the more often, super powerful, comfortable with herself, romantic-natured Storm that we know and love. I mean, it is depressing to look at, and I think that's because, it's depression we're looking at, so they did a great job depicting that to us. Let me paint a picture for you. A weaker writer than Claremont would anticipate that despite their character losing their powers, they know eventually they'll come back in some form or the other, and might let that dampen some of the severity of it on the actual character level. The character may go on to continue being a major player in the story, have some key action moments without their powers still, but this issue doesn't do that. This is dialogue driven, this is emotional surgery, and it is certainly not laissez-faire recovery for the character. And it's really quite a slow burn. I know some people read X-Men for the action. I personally don't. To me, the action is icing on the cake of what is a very prolonged, dramatic soap opera. And this issue really is captivating on that level. It's going to sound odd, and it's probably because I'm a very theater-minded person, but a lot of this issue, particularly these in-house interactions of Forge and Storm, felt like a play to me. Slowly unraveling information. There's a slow building up of character relationships in a precise and intentional way. And then, for the climactic ending, we get this cathartic release in a way. I also really admire that they went ahead and did this story because it's kind of a funny juxtaposition to the superhero genre and the typical meaning of two major characters. Though I know Forge isn't major at this point as he was just introduced, but normally it'll be like Daredevil meeting Spider-Man for the first time, and they're fighting Ultron, and they're sharing quips, and getting to know each other that way through the dance of combat. This is the opposite. Imagine if Daredevil and Spider-Man instead met for the very first time in one of their apartments, shared a bottle of Chardonnay, played a game of chess, and intimately discussed the nuances of their life and upbringing. I mean, I would love that, and I love this for, paralleled reasons to that. And when we talk about comic books and we sort of take a deeper look at them like we're doing right now, it's important to note that it's inherently a unique medium in the sense that it is this interdisciplinary effort of panels, artwork, narrative, dialogue, all of that together. So I wanted to mention that the artistic methodology of conveying elements and mood in this story through Forge's holographic home and lab is a pretty fantastic idea, and it makes for some incredible visuals in an otherwise way more dialogue-driven story, as I've said. So we know it's a big deal that Storm has lost her powers, but we have to ask ourselves, why is this a big deal? Well, with previous knowledge of this series, and as we peel back the layers of the conversations in this issue, it's obvious that this isn't just a loss of powers. It is a loss of identity for Storm that spirals into a complete crisis. Keep in mind, when we first meet Storm in Giant Size X-Men, she's in Africa and is literally being worshipped as a goddess to her people, as she there used her mutant abilities to sustain them and stave off regional drought. So spirituality, a connection with nature, self-confidence, these are all kind of defining characteristics and foundational characteristics of Storm that were tied closely with her powers. So without her powers, can she still be all those things? Can she still be a leader? Can she still be an X-Men, even? Not to mention, it takes away from her being part of the mutant community in a way, too. I'm not sure if it's ever been broken down what the neutralizer does sort of on a technical genetic level, but if she has no powers, is she a mutant still? So, as we can see, her role in society and her life is completely thrown askew. It's a domino effect for how she thinks, how she ascribes meaning to things, how she carries herself, everything. It is, as I've stressed, a big deal. So I want to wrap this up with what I've extrapolated from this storyline. Life-death, it's being physically alive but feeling mentally dead because of loss or some form of grief. And it's explored in a dramatic, poignant, and beautiful way in this issue, and I think it's a feeling that is very human and we can all relate to having felt that way at times. And we get this sort of philosophical conversation that ensues between Forge and Storm, a battle of perspectives on life, death, and our place in the universe in a sense. And we also get hit with the impact of the breach of trust, being open with your heart, allowing yourself to love, and the trauma that can come from the rejection or emptiness of those feelings. And I think as Forge was trying to help, he did in a way that he didn't intend to. Storm ends up giving him a piece of her mind in a very savage but brutally honest and truthful way. And I think this is all stuff she needed to hear just as much as Forge. Reinforcements of the concept of what makes you, you, instead of just a hollow person. It creates this foundation for Storm to start building back up to the person she was, even without her powers. It's not impossible. And I found that very inspiring. We all at times, and especially after dramatic loss, question who we are and how we got here and if things will ever get better. And they will. We just need to recenter our meaning for life, our passion in life, and our duty in life. It might take some deep, painful, stressful introspection, but it's important to know who you are, and it's important to know that you are capable of adapting, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you less of a person, it means you're capable of growing as a person. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, please let me know and I will be thrilled to make more because I really enjoy talking about these subjects with you and sort of doing these deep dives into some of my favorite comic books of all time. Until next time, my friends.